On a busy New York street, under the glow of neon lights and the hum of passing cars, a young girl named Emma walked past the same homeless boy every day on her way home from school. His name was Alex, though she didn't know it back then. He sat on the sidewalk, his worn-out clothes and weathered face speaking of hardship and years of struggle. Emma, with her family's wealth and privilege, could have easily turned a blind eye, but something about him struck a chord in her heart. Each day, as she passed him, she noticed how he sat there, looking lost and hungry. She couldn't bear the sight. One evening, she stopped, rummaged through her bag, and handed him a sandwich she'd packed for herself. Alex, surprised, looked up at her with dull eyes. A faint smile tugged at his lips as he accepted the food. From that moment on, it became their routine. Day after day, Emma made it a point to bring him something to eat, sometimes a sandwich, other times a hot meal, even a cup of coffee on cold mornings. She never spoke much to him, and he didn't say much in return, but the exchange became a silent understanding, an unspoken bond forged through kindness. Years passed. Emma grew older, and Alex, though he seemed to fade in the background of her life, remained a constant part of her routine. She went on to attend college, began her career, and found herself deeply involved in the bustling life of New York City. But she never forgot about Alex. Every time she crossed that street, she would glance over to the corner where he used to sit, hoping he was okay. One fateful afternoon, while Emma was out shopping, her heart skipped a beat when she saw a familiar face standing in the middle of a crowded street. It was Alex, but not the same tattered boy she had once seen. Now, he wore a clean suit, a stethoscope around his neck, and his eyes gleamed with the confidence of someone who had worked hard to turn his life around. Emma gasped, recognizing him instantly. Before she could speak, Alex stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "Emma, it's been a while." She stood there in stunned silence as he continued, "I don't think you remember, but you were the one who changed my life. You fed me when I had nothing. You showed me that people care, even when the world feels cold." Emma's eyes filled with tears as Alex explained how he had managed to escape the streets, driven by the hope Emma had given him. He had worked tirelessly, studied late nights, and eventually earned a scholarship to medical school. Now, he was a doctor, a healer, doing everything he could to give back to the world that had once seemed so unforgiving. And fate, it seemed, had brought them together again. That evening, as Emma stepped out of a taxi, she was hit by a speeding car that veered out of control. She was knocked unconscious, her body lying lifeless on the cold pavement. The sound of sirens filled the air as paramedics rushed to the scene. Among them was Alex, now a doctor, who quickly assessed the situation. He took charge, saving her life with the skills and knowledge he had gained throughout the years. When Emma awoke in the hospital, she found herself staring into the familiar eyes of the man who had once been just a nameless face on the street. "I told you I'd never forget you," Alex whispered, smiling down at her. Emma, overwhelmed with gratitude, knew that the life she had once saved had now saved hers in return. They shared a quiet moment, understanding that the kindness they had shown each other all those years ago had come full circle in the most unexpected of ways. In the days that followed, Emma's recovery was swift, but her thoughts were consumed by Alex and the incredible turn of events. She spent hours in the hospital room, reflecting on the twists and turns her life had taken, and the one constant that had always been there, her daily gesture of kindness to a stranger who had never asked for anything in return. After she was discharged, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their connection had a deeper purpose. She reached out to Alex, wanting to meet with him outside of the hospital setting, to understand more about the man he had become. They met at a small cafe, the same one Emma had passed by countless times during her walks to school. Alex sat across from her, dressed in a professional jacket but still carrying an air of humility that reminded Emma of the man who had once sat on that very sidewalk, accepting her food with quiet gratitude. He smiled warmly as she sat down, his eyes now reflecting a sense of fulfillment she hadn't seen before. "Tell me everything," Emma said, her voice soft but full of curiosity. Alex paused for a moment before responding. "It wasn't easy, you know. I didn't have anyone but you, at least not until I got the courage to change things myself. I remember that first sandwich you gave me. I wasn't just hungry for food. I was starving for kindness. That small gesture gave me hope. It made me believe that maybe I wasn't invisible, that I had worth. From there, I started to dream, really dream. I wanted to be something, do something that mattered." Emma listened, captivated by his story. He shared how, after she had given him food that first time, he started saving every penny he could. Over the years, he'd read books, studied on his own, and eventually found a scholarship to a local community college. The road hadn't been easy, there had been setbacks, moments where he nearly gave up, but each day, he thought back to Emma's kindness. And that kept him going. "I'm here because of you," Alex said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're the reason I kept going when everything seemed impossible." Emma's heart swelled with gratitude. "I never knew it meant that much. I never even knew your name." Alex chuckled, the same quiet laugh that had once comforted her when he was just a boy on the sidewalk. "I think you did more than just give me food, Emma. You gave me the belief that I could change my life." As they talked, Emma realized how profound the impact of a simple act of kindness could be. She had always believed that wealth and success were determined by material things, but here, in front of her, was the proof that sometimes, the most valuable things are invisible: the kindness you give, the hope you inspire, and the love you share without expectation. Over the next few months, Emma and Alex continued to reconnect. Their friendship grew, and their bond deepened into something that transcended their pasts. She learned more about his journey, his struggles, and his triumphs. In turn, Alex shared how he had become a doctor not just because he wanted to save lives but because he wanted to be the kind of person who could give people the hope that Emma had once given him. One sunny afternoon, Emma sat in his office, her hands clasped together nervously. She was about to start a charity that would provide meals, education, and opportunities for homeless people in the city. She'd always had a passion for helping others, but now, she had a personal connection to the cause. Alex, sitting beside her, had agreed to be an advocate for the charity. "It's the least I can do," he said, smiling at her. "You've already done so much for me." Emma beamed, feeling the weight of their shared history, how it had all come full circle, from a simple act of kindness to saving lives, to building a foundation for others who needed help the way Alex once did. As the years passed, the charity flourished, and Emma and Alex worked side by side, helping countless people find the hope that had once saved them both. Emma knew that their story wasn't just about a girl helping a homeless boy, it was about how a single act of compassion could ignite a ripple of change, transforming not only lives but entire communities. They had changed each other's lives, and now, together, they were changing the world, one small act of kindness at a time. As the charity grew, so did Emma and Alex's partnership. The streets of New York, once bustling with strangers and uncertainty, became filled with faces of hope. Their work had inspired many others to step forward and offer help, and soon they were organizing regular drives, offering food, job training, and medical assistance. Alex, with his medical background, often led the health initiatives, offering free clinics and wellness checks for those who couldn't afford care. Emma, driven by her passion for social change, managed the organization's outreach programs, expanding their reach across the city. They traveled together, visiting shelters and homeless communities, offering not just food but also resources to help people get back on their feet. Emma would often stand by Alex as he worked with the patients, seeing firsthand how his compassion made a difference. She'd watch him speak to people with the same care he had once shown her, a gentle reassurance that they mattered. One evening, as they sat together in the office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and the soft hum of the city outside, Emma turned to Alex with a smile. "You know, I still can't get over how incredible it is that you're here. I mean, all these years, you were just this boy sitting on the sidewalk, and now you're the one saving lives. It's amazing." Alex leaned back in his chair, his gaze focused out the window. "It feels like it's all come full circle. It's like I was always meant to be part of this. Helping people. Giving back. Maybe, in a way, all those years on the streets were necessary for me to truly understand what people need." Emma nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride in him. "And the fact that we're doing this together, it feels like the best kind of story." Alex smiled at her, his eyes reflecting a warmth that made her heart flutter. "I wouldn't be here without you, Emma. And I don't just mean the charity. I mean everything. You gave me more than food. You gave me the courage to believe in myself." The room grew quiet as they both let the weight of those words sink in. What had started as a simple act of kindness, one that Emma had never expected to change the course of her life, had created a ripple effect that had reached far beyond anything she could have imagined. It had not only transformed Alex's future, but it had reshaped her own, as well. As they sat there, Emma realized that life had a way of bringing people together for reasons unknown. She had never anticipated that her small act of compassion all those years ago would lead her to this place, working side by side with someone who had once been a stranger, but now was as close as family. The bond between them had grown stronger with each passing year, and it wasn't just their shared history that tied them together, it was their shared purpose. Months later, during a charity event they held at a grand venue in Manhattan, Emma stood at the podium, speaking to a crowd of donors, volunteers, and city officials. As she spoke of the organization's mission and the future they envisioned, she glanced over at Alex, who was standing near the front, his steady eyes watching her with pride. She could feel the strength of their partnership, how far they had come, and the promise of what was still to come. And in that moment, she realized that their story had already surpassed what she had once imagined. It was no longer just about her helping him, it was about a shared vision for a better world. After the event, as they stood outside, watching the city lights flicker on, Emma turned to Alex. "Do you ever think about where we started? How different things could have been?" Alex smiled, his expression contemplative. "All the time. But I don't think I would change a thing. It's our story, Emma. And it's still being written." They stood there for a moment, letting the sounds of the city envelop them, as Emma took in the full depth of their journey. From the crowded sidewalks of New York, where a homeless boy had once been a nameless face to her, to this moment, standing together with a shared mission, they had built something that mattered, something bigger than either of them could have achieved alone. As the stars twinkled overhead, Emma knew they were only just getting started. There would be more lives to touch, more stories to change. And together, they would continue to build a future where no one was left behind. Years passed, and The impact of Emma and Alex's work only deepened. The charity expanded to other cities, with satellite offices popping up across the country. They began offering not just food and medical care but also educational programs, legal aid, and job placement services. Emma's vision for a world where people were not defined by their circumstances was becoming a reality, and Alex, always by her side, was more determined than ever to continue making a difference. Their partnership had evolved into something even more powerful, a true collaboration of minds, hearts, and shared purpose. Emma had always been driven by the desire to change the world, but now, with Alex, it felt as though they were unstoppable. Together, they had built a legacy of hope and transformation. The people they helped were not just survivors, they were given the tools to rebuild their lives. One day, Emma was sitting at her desk, reviewing a new proposal for a mental health initiative, when Alex walked into her office, a quiet smile on his face. He'd always had a way of making her feel at ease, even in the busiest moments. But today, there was something different in his expression, something that caught her attention. "What's going on?" she asked, looking up from her papers. Alex paused for a moment, as though weighing his words. "I was thinking about the future. About everything we've accomplished, and what we still have to do. I think it's time we expand our vision even further." Emma leaned back in her chair, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I've been working with a few other doctors and experts on a plan to establish a network of health and wellness centers for people who are transitioning out of homelessness. Places where they can get comprehensive care, mental health support, addiction recovery, and physical health services all under one roof. Not just temporary fixes, but long-term care. Places that will help people not only survive but truly thrive." Emma's eyes widened as she processed what he was saying. It was ambitious, but then again, everything they had done together had been ambitious. It would take time, resources, and an even greater network of support, but she knew that if anyone could make it happen, it was Alex. "That's incredible, Alex," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I think it's exactly what we need to take the next step. We've been helping people get by, but this could be the breakthrough. A holistic approach to healing and rebuilding." Alex nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I want to create a space where people don't just get the help they need in the moment, but where they can rebuild their lives, learn new skills, gain confidence, and feel like they're part of something. Not just treated like a problem to be solved, but like human beings who deserve dignity and respect." Emma's heart swelled with pride. Alex's vision was beyond anything she had imagined, yet it felt like a natural next step in their shared journey. This was the kind of impact they had always dreamed of making, something that would last for generations, that would change the way society viewed homelessness, and ultimately transform lives in ways they hadn't even begun to envision. "We'll need to raise a lot of funds for that," Emma said, already thinking about the logistics. "It's a big undertaking, but I'm in. I'm all in." Alex smiled, his eyes gleaming with determination. "I know you are." As the days passed, Emma and Alex set the wheels in motion. They began to reach out to partners, build a team, and lay the groundwork for their vision. They spoke to legislators about the importance of long-term care for vulnerable populations. They met with architects and healthcare professionals to design the first wellness center. But throughout all of it, they never lost sight of the core of their mission, to make a lasting difference in people's lives. They traveled to different cities, speaking to those who had once been homeless, gathering stories and testimonials that would help shape their new approach. It wasn't just about providing services, it was about offering hope, dignity, and a path forward. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Emma and Alex found themselves sitting on the steps of the first wellness center they had opened. The sun was setting behind the skyline, casting a warm glow over the city. Emma leaned back, feeling a sense of fulfillment she hadn't felt in a long time. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said quietly, looking out at the city they had fought so hard to change. Alex sat beside her, his arm resting casually on the step. "Yeah, but we still have so much to do. We'll keep pushing until every person who needs help can get it." Emma nodded, her heart full. "Together, we can make it happen." As they sat there, in the quiet of the evening, Emma realized that the journey they had started all those years ago had been about more than just feeding a homeless boy. It had been about creating a future where kindness, compassion, and unwavering belief in human potential could reshape the world. And with Alex by her side, she knew that together, they could continue to change lives, one person at a time, for as long as they lived. And so, their story continued, one of hope, resilience, and the power of two people who never gave up on each other or the world. Years later, Emma and Alex stood at the opening of the largest wellness center they had ever built, an awe-inspiring facility that stretched across multiple city blocks in the heart of New York. The grand opening was an event that brought together donors, volunteers, city officials, and, most importantly, the people they had dedicated their lives to serving. The center was a true reflection of everything they had worked for, a place that offered not only food and shelter but education, mental health care, job training, and community support, all in a space designed to make people feel valued and human again. Emma stood on stage, her eyes scanning the crowd. She saw familiar faces, people who had once been lost, who had walked through the streets with nowhere to go, and now, they were standing tall, empowered, and proud. It was a powerful reminder of the difference they had made. And standing beside her was Alex, his calm and steady presence grounding her as always. As she stepped to the microphone, the crowd grew silent, and she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. "This center," she began, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment, "is more than just a building. It's a dream, one that began with a simple act of kindness many years ago. It's a place where every person who walks through these doors will be treated with dignity, with compassion, and with the belief that they can rise above their circumstances." She paused, her gaze shifting to Alex, who stood next to her, his eyes reflecting the same passion that had fueled their journey. None of this would be possible without the incredible work of Dr. Alex, who has dedicated his life to helping people not just survive, but thrive. "Alex, thank you for being the heart of this project. You inspire me every day." The crowd erupted in applause, and Alex's smile was as humble as ever. He took the microphone from her, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This," Alex began, his eyes scanning the audience, "is just the beginning. What we've built here is more than a service, it's a community. It's a promise that no matter where you come from or what you've been through, you have a place where you can find support, heal, and rebuild." I want to thank Emma for being the visionary behind all of this, and for believing in me when I was just a boy on the streets. She changed my life, and together, we've changed so many others. The crowd cheered again, and Emma felt a lump form in her throat. It was a surreal feeling, standing in front of so many people who had been touched by their work. The road to this point had been long and challenging, filled with setbacks and obstacles, but every moment had been worth it. They had changed the lives of thousands, and now they were creating a ripple that would extend far beyond the city. After the event, as the evening wound down and the last guests trickled out of the building, Emma and Alex stood alone, looking out at the facility they had built. The lights of the city sparkled in the distance, and a cool breeze swept through the air, signaling the arrival of the night. "I can't believe we did it," Emma said, her voice soft but filled with awe. Alex turned to her, his eyes filled with quiet pride. "We did it together. And this is just the beginning. There are more cities to reach, more people to help, and more lives to transform. I can't imagine doing this with anyone else." Emma smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "You know, I always thought that my life would be about achieving success in the traditional sense. But this is what really matters. The people we've helped, the families we've changed, it's worth more than anything I ever imagined." Alex nodded, his gaze tender. "I know exactly what you mean. I used to think that I was just a kid who had nothing to offer. But now, looking at all of this, I realize that we've both found our purpose." As they stood there in the glow of the lights, surrounded by the city they had worked so hard to change, Emma knew in her heart that they had done more than just build a wellness center. They had built a legacy that would continue to grow, to touch more lives, and to remind people that no matter where they came from, they mattered. And in that quiet moment, with Alex by her side, Emma realized that their story was far from over. It was just beginning to unfold in ways they couldn't yet imagine, and together, they would keep pushing forward, creating a world where kindness, compassion, and opportunity would always have a place. As time passed, Emma and Alex's wellness centers continued to expand, touching communities across the country and even internationally. Their efforts became a model for how cities and organizations could address the root causes of homelessness, offering long-term solutions rather than short-term fixes. They were invited to speak at global conferences, sharing their story of transformation and how their partnership had turned a simple act of kindness into a movement. Despite their growing success, Emma and Alex remained grounded, always returning to the heart of their mission, the people. They never lost sight of the individuals whose lives they were changing, and they made sure to stay involved in the day-to-day work of the organization. They would visit the centers regularly, sitting down with those who had found a path to recovery, listening to their stories, and offering encouragement. One summer afternoon, Emma sat in the garden of their New York center, reflecting on how far they had come. The center had become a vibrant community hub, with people coming together for support groups, art therapy sessions, and vocational training. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing in the air, a stark contrast to the silence of the streets that Emma and Alex had first encountered. As she watched the children, she thought back to that first day when she had offered Alex a sandwich, not knowing how that small gesture would change both of their lives. The thought brought a soft smile to her lips. That moment had been the spark, but it had ignited something far bigger, something that was still growing, still reaching people in ways they hadn't even dreamed of. Alex came up to her, sitting beside her on the bench in the garden. He had a look of quiet contentment on his face as he watched the scene unfold. "Sometimes I think back to the days when I had nothing, when I was sitting on the streets wondering if anyone would notice me. And then I see this, and I can hardly believe it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "It feels surreal sometimes, doesn't it?" Emma nodded, her gaze softening. "It does. But in a good way. Everything we've built, everything we've fought for, it's real. It's happening. And it's all because we didn't give up on each other. Or on the people who needed us." Alex's smile grew as he took her hand. "You showed me that the world doesn't have to be a place where only the strong survive. You taught me that even the smallest acts of kindness can change everything." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart full. And you taught me that it's never too late to make a difference. That no matter where we come from, we have the power to transform our own lives, and the lives of others. They sat together in silence for a few moments, taking in the beauty of the garden and the sense of peace that had settled over the center. The sounds of people working, laughing, and rebuilding their lives filled the air, and Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had done something monumental, but more importantly, they had given people hope, and that was something no amount of success could ever replace. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the city, Emma and Alex stood up and walked toward the building, side by side. It wasn't just the future of the wellness centers that they were focused on, it was the future of the world they were shaping together. Do you think we'll ever stop? Emma asked, looking up at Alex. With a playful grin. He chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. I don't think we ever will. There's always more to be done. More lives to change. But as long as we're doing it together, I think we'll be all right. Emma laughed, feeling the truth of his words. She knew that as long as they were united by their mission, nothing could stop them. They were no longer just the girl who had fed the homeless boy and the boy who had been saved by kindness. They had become a team, an unstoppable force for good, with a shared vision for a better world. As they walked through the doors of the center, ready to begin another day of work, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. They had built something that would last long after they were gone, a legacy of compassion, hope, and change. And as they moved forward, hand in hand, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, continuing to change lives, one act of kindness at a time. The years that followed only strengthened the foundation that Emma and Alex had laid. Their work began to take on even more layers of impact, influencing policies, social attitudes, and even how the world viewed people who had experienced homelessness. As their network of wellness centers continued to grow, Emma and Alex were asked to collaborate with governments and international organizations, developing new models of care that emphasized long-term rehabilitation, education, and empowerment. Emma found herself traveling more often than she had ever anticipated, speaking at events, meeting with potential partners, and negotiating with world leaders. But despite the demands on her time, she never lost sight of what truly mattered, being present for those whose lives had been changed by their work. Alex, too, had grown into a respected leader in the medical community. His efforts to bring holistic healthcare to underserved populations had garnered attention from major health organizations. But in every meeting, every consultation, he remained grounded, always remembering the streets that had once been his home. His compassion, combined with his knowledge, made him an irreplaceable figure in the world of healthcare for marginalized communities. But as their influence grew, they both knew there were still battles to fight. Homelessness, poverty, and inequality had deep roots in society, and though they had made incredible strides, the road ahead was still long. They faced new challenges, including securing consistent funding for their centers and navigating political barriers. Yet, despite the difficulties, Emma and Alex never wavered in their commitment. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, Emma and Alex sat in the quiet of their New York home. The city outside was alive with the hum of traffic, but inside, it felt peaceful, calm, despite the whirlwind of their lives. Do you ever think we'll truly change everything? Emma asked, her voice contemplative. Alex looked at her, his gaze steady. I think we already have. We've changed the way people think about homelessness. We've created a model that works. People no longer see the homeless as invisible, they see them as human beings, deserving of dignity and care. That's a huge shift. Emma smiled, leaning back against the cushions. You're right. But there's so much more to do, isn't there? We've come so far, but we've only touched a small fraction of the world. He nodded. There's always more to do. But I think that's the point. We don't do this because it's easy. We do it because it matters. Because every life we touch is worth the effort. As they sat in silence for a while, Emma thought about the years that had passed since she first met Alex on that busy New York sidewalk. She thought about the obstacles they had faced, the lessons they had learned, and the countless people whose lives had been transformed because of their work. It was overwhelming, humbling, and deeply fulfilling. I'm so proud of us, Emma said softly, turning to face him. We've built something incredible. Something that will outlast us. Alex's expression softened, his voice tender. We've done it together. And I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and you've never stopped believing in our mission. Emma's eyes filled with gratitude. You've taught me more than I could ever put into words, Alex. You've shown me the real meaning of compassion. And we've made so much more possible than I ever imagined. Alex smiled, his eyes shining with affection. This is just the beginning, Emma. Our work is never truly done. There's always more to learn, more to give, and more lives to change. As long as we're together, we'll keep pushing forward. They sat together, the weight of their accomplishments sinking in, but also the realization that their journey was far from over. They were no longer just two individuals with a shared vision, they were partners, collaborators, and leaders of a movement that had grown into something much larger than themselves. The world still had its struggles, but Emma and Alex were unwavering in their belief that kindness could heal even the deepest wounds. As long as they had each other, and as long as they had their purpose, they knew that no challenge was insurmountable. And as the years continued to unfold, Emma and Alex carried that belief with them, through every success and setback, every new center they opened, and every person whose life they touched. Together, they would continue to build a future where compassion led the way, knowing that the most powerful change came not from grand gestures, but from the small acts of kindness that could transform everything.